What worked and what didn't work for getting pregnant at age 42. I'm going to talk about all of that and more in this video, so stay tuned. Welcome back, my friends. My name is Sarah. This is the Sarah Kleiner Wellness YouTube channel, and I pulled out my camera today. I'm not on Zoom. You have no idea how many comments I get from people who just want me to use my real camera. So here we are using the real camera to do a short video about what worked and what didn't work for me to get pregnant over age 40. So first I want to start off this video by saying none of this is medical advice, so please just listen for educational purposes only. The second thing I want to say is that if any of this information sounds like it would be helpful for you to learn more, I do have a bunch of courses available. Now, this is why I make videos. I make free content on Instagram, here on YouTube. I have a podcast. I have a bunch of free guides, which I'll also put down in the show notes for you. But I do have courses for people who want to study and learn deeper beyond my free content. But free content, extensive information. So my friend Carrie Bennett and I do have a fertility course. We have run it 3 times now, and we've had 6 pregnancies so far out of the cohorts, and we just started running them in September. So I'm sure we're going to have more of those September 2022. But we are doing an on-demand version of the cohort that is a little bit of a lower price. So if you want to get that on-demand cohort, you can get that linked down in the show notes. And then I also have several bundles and courses that can kind of help give you a framework of a lot of the things that I did if you are struggling to conceive. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what didn't work first of all, because if you are new here, you may not know that I did struggle to get pregnant. I wanted to start getting pregnant in 2020. The end of 2020, we kind of just made this decision, okay, it's now or never. I turned 41 in 2020, and so I was like, okay, we got to do this. My daughter Alexis is 15 now, but she has pretty significant health challenges and other issues, and so we just were putting it off, like it's gonna get easier, and then it never got easier, and we're like, okay, we got to do this. So I started trying to get pregnant in the end of 2020, and I actually got pregnant very quickly. The problem was that I couldn't hold a pregnancy. I lost a baby in February of 2021, and then another one in July of 2021. And it's hard. You know, women go through pregnancy loss every single day, and no one talks about it. It's almost like, and me having this like public platform, I was like, I was just so upset about it. I really felt so vulnerable. I didn't want to share about it with people until I kind of navigated my way through it. So I'm out here making videos and podcasts and all that stuff, and I just didn't feel like sharing it just yet. So that's why I didn't talk about it when I was going through it. Some women are good talking about it when they go through it. Some women do what you got to do, right? Protect your mental health. But that was really, really tough to go through that 2 times in a row. And I got sucked into this whole thing of believing the doctors, and the doctors were telling me, because then at that point I had turned 42 in June of 2021, and the doctors said, you know, your eggs are no good, it's taking you a long time to get pregnant, and then you lose the babies because your eggs are not good. So we're going to recommend IVF. That way we can test your eggs and test the embryos before we implant them, and then you will know for sure whether or not it's like going to be a good pregnancy. And so I didn't trust my body. I really regret listening to those doctors, and went through with the IVF process twice. Did not get any healthy embryos from 2 rounds of IVF and about $50,000. And IVF is really a hard process. It is not fun. So at that point, I had met Dr. Jack Kruse, and he basically said you need to learn about leptin and how it works in your body to get pregnant, and had this whole long conversation with Jack. And that's when I decided, and when I had just started going through IVF, that I talked to Jack. So I started doing all of the things to reverse leptin resistance. I actually tested my leptin and I was leptin resistant. So I started Jack's protocol and then kind of quickly realized it wasn't going to be as helpful for women. I needed to tailor a few things. So I did tailor his leptin prescription a little bit more to females. And so started doing that. Then I started doing a lot of other quantum things and ended up getting pregnant in January of 2022 and gave birth to my son at age 43 in October of 2022. He's 8 months now that I'm recording this. So what did not work for me? First of all, I had been carnivore for 2 years when I was first starting to go through the pregnancy process. And if you had asked me at the time, I would have told you my hormones were in a fantastic place, that I was feeling good, all of the things. The truth is I was about 20 pounds overweight. I had put on about 20 pounds after I'd been carnivore for a while, and my thyroid had downregulated. I didn't know that until I started doing a little bit of further testing and found out that I had low T3. Now, a lot of carnivore doctors will say this is because you're more thyroid sensitive. And maybe that's true for some people, but for me, it was causing my metabolism to run a lot slower, for me to gain weight and have a really hard time losing any weight because my thyroid was slowed down. So I ended up going more towards a keto approach starting in the beginning of 2021. And then after I talked with Dr. Kruse, I understood that I needed to start doing a little bit of local seasonal carbohydrates, some carb cycling. So I really did a ketogenic diet 5 to 6 days a week and was in ketosis. And then I came out of ketosis on that 6th and sometimes 7th day with local seasonal carbs. So whatever was in season. And I did use cellar stable produce as well, like root vegetables, potatoes, things like that. But I didn't go eat a bunch of cookies and cake and candy, right? It was like apples, potatoes, just things like that. So I did majority of my diet ketosis, and I would have carnivore days in there as well. But I actually had to start going in and out of ketosis and become metabolically flexible. That improved my leptin sensitivity. I also had to start eating breakfast every single day. Again, that's part of my leptin protocol. Getting enough protein. And that was dietary wise. So a lot of people assume I did carnivore to get pregnant. I just want to clear that up. I did not. I did some carnivore days and mostly a ketogenic animal-based approach, but I did have the days where I came out of ketosis and I probably ate between 50 and 100 grams of carbs on those days, not like Ray Peat style, because some people just get all kinds of funky ideas on the internet and, oh, Sarah's Ray Peat. No, I am not, and I don't recommend that strategy at all. I was able to get my thyroid numbers, everything into a really good range, hormones in a better place with that dietary strategy. But I think what helped more than that was the quantum health principles. And so implementing sunrise every single day, UVA light, and UVA is where our body gets the signal to synthesize our sex hormones, thyroid hormones. So I started really being strict with sunrise and UVA time, going outside during those times. And I wasn't always perfect. Sometimes I could only go outside for a minute or two. Some days I could stay out 30 minutes or an hour, right? So I didn't have to do it perfectly to the letter. I just made sure I did it, and I always saw sunlight before I saw screens. So the circadian piece was huge. I also blocked artificial light at night, started turning my phone screen red all of the time, and just really, really watched my relationship with light. So that was really, really instrumental in helping me with this process. So circadian rhythms and fertility are hugely related. You can find a ton of academic research on fertility and circadian rhythms, as well as leptin and fertility as well. So these are two things that are underutilized. If you go through the functional medicine route, which I did, you're going to get told to take a bunch of supplements, and I did those. I did all the supplements. So that supplements kind of go in that bucket of what did not work for me. Now, maybe some supplements might be helpful to help you get back in range with some things, but for me, it was just a giant waste of money to supplement and supplement. And here, this number is low. Let's add this supplement in. It wasn't until I kind of tossed those out and really just got strict with my leptin protocol with my diet and my leptin protocol with circadian rhythms and blocking artificial light at night, that I started to notice, number one, I lost 30 pounds. So I had gained 20 pounds being carnivore, so I lost 30 pounds doing these things without trying to lose 30 pounds. And my fertility was improving. I was sleeping better. I was feeling better, right? And then I was able to get pregnant without IVF in January of that year. The next thing that I did that I think was actually really helpful, that a lot of women are really scared of, is cold plunging. So I know this sounds completely insane to do cold plunging when you're trying to improve your hormones, but there is a way that you can do it so that you don't disrupt your hormones. You have to be careful. I actually created a whole entire cold therapy course that you can get as a just separate item, or you can get it as part of the fertility course that I do with Carrie Bennett. We add that in there because it's just something I want to really explain to people. But cold therapy was something that really did help me improve my fertility because it improves your mitochondrial health, right? It actually shrinks the space between respiratory proteins in the mitochondria. And when you're not able to get pregnant, whether it's from bad eggs or endometriosis or adenomyosis or a lot of these other issues that women struggle with who can't get pregnant, there's a mitochondrial issue at the base of this issue of not getting pregnant. And so targeting the mitochondria through circadian rhythms, because mitochondria are like sensors. If they don't sense the environment is optimal for pregnancy, then it's going to create some sort of an issue where pregnancy is going to be difficult. So circadian rhythms, cold therapy, leptin prescription protocol with my diet, okay? The other thing I did, lots of earthing, lots of grounding, lots of time in nature, which I know, again, sounds too good to be true, too woo-woo, but there's a lot of science that shows how just being in nature can actually organize the water within our body, which the water network is huge for communication inside the body. So I did a lot of grounding, a lot of time in nature. I also kind of changed the water that I drink, a lot of structured water, adding ketone, hypertonic minerals. I'll put the mineral protocol that I did down in the show notes for you if you want to check that out also. And just really focusing on sleep, getting good sleep. I did cut coffee out. I cut coffee out in January of 2021. So that wasn't like a new thing that I did. But when I gave myself 2 months off of the coffee, I noticed that my HRV, which is really how well your body is recovering and responding to stress, it actually doubled. It had been somewhat low and it doubled after 2 months of no coffee. So some people are like, I can't tell a difference without the coffee. I really couldn't tell a difference in how I felt, but that HRV doubling was a huge, huge indicator that something was working really well. Also did mouth taping, also cut all the toxic products out of my life. Skincare, hair care, all that stuff. I don't wear a lot of makeup. I don't get my nails done. Pretty plain Jane. Cleaning products, all natural, all of that. So if you want to look at some of the things that I use, I'll put my product guide down in the show notes for you, because I do just try to keep everything as natural as possible. Now that I have a son, I still want to keep the house and everything as natural as humanly possible. So those are some things that I did. So again, with diet, I had to kind of create a strategy, a protocol that was a little bit more hormone friendly. And it did not mean eating like 300 grams of carbs a day and going like full Ray Peat and drinking orange juice and Coke. It literally meant a couple of days a week, or maybe even just one day a week, depending on the week, I would have 50 to 100 grams of carbs in the form of whole food carbohydrates, potatoes, squashes, fruits, things like that. I would have them at lunch and dinner at the end of my meal. And I did use some digestive enzymes because my body was not used to eating carbs. And a lot of people that have been off carbs for a long time, they've lost that enzymatic function. So supporting yourself for a little bit can be really, really, really helpful in that process. So diet was big, but I think all of the quantum strategies were actually more helpful. The cold therapy was immensely helpful. And again, you have to do this with regards and nuance to your hormones. Women, do not cold plunge every day. Probably don't cold plunge 5 days a week. And then if you're not cold adapted yet, don't start off with a full body cold immersion. And if you do, keep it 60, 70 degrees. Start with that water on the warmer side. All these crazy like Wim Hof cold plunges that people are doing, all this crazy breathing and 32 degrees and 30 days in a row. not gonna work for fertility. You have to do it in a slow, nuanced way. Spending time outdoors, getting sunlight on your skin. I started actually spending a lot more time out in the sun, getting my vitamin D levels up, practicing safe sun exposure. So not overdoing it and damaging my skin and getting burned, but just the right amount of sun exposure to get my vitamin D levels up naturally. So that was really helpful as well. So again, these are just some things that I did, not medical advice or anything like that. I've just been getting a lot of questions about how I did this. I'm 44 now and my son is 8 months old. It's kind of a little bit of a crazy experience, but I've had so many women over 40 now, and just women who've had trouble conceiving in general that have come to me and asked me if I could talk a little bit more about this. So I hope this video has been helpful. Again, in the show notes, I have a bunch of free resources. I also have that fertility course with Carrie Bennett. We're doing the on-demand version for summer that comes with a cold therapy course, as well as Carrie's mitochondrial health 3-hour course as well. And then I have some other courses like my 21-day leptin reset that can give you a good framework of diet and those sorts of things to improve your mitochondrial health, even if you're not trying to get pregnant, right? If you're just struggling with your health in general or wanting to lose weight, those courses can be super helpful. So I hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you again soon.